You're going to hear from, obviously, over the next 6 days, great sales pitch from Next and a whole host of representatives that you've got. Unfortunately, Epping Forest Council have only managed to supply 2, and obviously Liam doing a great job, but single-handedly on his own. Thank you very much, Liam. I know, sir, you have a hard job in front of you. You've got to listen to all the different legal angles, and at the end of the day, make a decision that is the right decision. And the public have trusted you to make the right decision. The development is approximately half a mile in length along Dowding Way. It's over 75 feet in height. And to put that in context, the Sainsbury's development is only 48 feet. So it's a third larger in height than what the Sainsbury's distribution centre is. And that's actually shielded by a grass bank with trees, shrubs, etc. So this development will be an absolute monstrosity along Dowding Way. And in fact, if you're driving from Chingford on Suiston Road, just as you come into the Abbey, you could, before Sainsbury's was built, and obviously if this development goes, you could see the Abbey itself, you could see the town itself. Now, what will happen is, there's a wall on the left of Suiston Road, i.e. Sainsbury's, and now you want to create a wall on the right. So you won't actually see any part of Waltham Abbey entering into it until you go over the M25 bridge. We've already got, as I've mentioned, Sainsbury's Distribution Centre. That has put over 2,000 vehicle movements per day on our road network. They built Dowding Way as part of their Section 106 to try and alleviate some of the problems along Dowding Way. When they built Dowding Way, they actually built it with an improper substrate. So it was quite common knowledge that the infrastructure to that road is not adequate for the vehicles moving up and down it, i.e. 40-tonne lorries. And us as residents have had to put up with constant roadworks, potholes, and that road collapsing. And if you go down it now, you will see where that road has collapsed, and it's in a constant state of disrepair. When we originally went to the Next meeting, which was about 4 years ago now, with your initial application, I asked the specific question, how many vehicles do you think you are going to put out of that distribution centre? No one would answer that question. And I was asking the PR people, the manager or director of property services, not one person. So when I said, do you think it would be a rough figure of 700? They went, well, yeah, maybe. But actually, when you start delving into the paperwork that you've published, right in the very middle of it, it's talking of over 1,000 vehicle movements per day. Now, obviously, some of that will be delivery vehicles in, some will be delivery vehicles out, and some will be staff. But you're talking about 1,000 vehicles additional onto Dowding Way, which I invite you to try and go from Dowding Way onto the roundabout at junction 26 between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. You will be bibbed at, you will have verbal abuse, and it will take you forever to get around that roundabout, because the roundabout, the infrastructure cannot cope with the capacity now, let alone another 1,000 vehicles. We've also looked at Waltham Abbey Town Council, Epping Forest Council, Essex Council, have all said that, there's a climate, problem, and we will be carbon neutral by 2030. How will that be the case if we're adding 1,000 vehicles to one particular part of the district, i.e. Waltham Abbey? Yes, I understand some of the vehicles will be electric, and I applaud that. That's brilliant. But electric HGVs do have a limited capacity and distance, so will they actually be able to deliver to where you want to go and get it back? Does the infrastructure in Waltham Abbey, i.e. the power supply, able to cope with that demand? I know from Thames Water, reading the report, that the actual sewerage cannot cope. And it's stated on the Thames Water report that the sewers would have to be rebuilt to cope with the sewerage from your development. So you've got electric vehicles, but some of the biggest polluting things that go into the atmosphere is brake dust. So we're now going to add, on a fast road, because it's a national speed limit, single carriageway, we're now going to add a junction, set of traffic lights. So we're now going to have vehicles braking when the lights go red, and we're then going to have vehicles accelerating away from the lights. So if that vehicle isn't electric, we're going to have more pollutants, because as you accelerate, you will use more emissions, and as you brake, you're going to get the brake dust particulates coming from that. Now, Waltham Abbey itself, the pollution, if you can imagine, we've got the M25, we've got Sewerston Road, we've got Dowding Way. We are polluted enough. We are in excess of, and I believe Liam has the technical things, but I think it's over 40, I can't think of the exact wording of it. But on the M25, between junctions 24 and junction 30, so the northeast sector of the M25, is one of the worst areas for accidents, broken downs, and severe congestion. The majority of that section is also all lanes running. I know this firsthand because of the job I do. I'd love to ask you to stand on the side of a motorway with a broken down in lane 1, vehicles passing you at 70 miles an hour, to then try and deal with something. So what would happen is, because of the congestion that you're adding to the M25 roundabout, we're then going to get tailbacks onto the M25, which is all lanes running. There's going to be accidents, there's going to be deaths. Next have said they don't want staff to travel in the SAC to work. On what legal grounds does Next have to monitor their staff travelling to and from work? Because surely my time of work, if I'm employed from 9 till 5, how can you tell me as an employee from 8:30 in the morning that I can't drive? I've got to phone up a DRT or go online. I might not have the ability to go online. How do I then book that DRT? And surely that's discriminating against people. Not everybody has the ability to go online. The budget that you've set, £4 million for 10 years, equates to £400,000 per year. How can you actually run 3 minibuses and the staff per year for 10 years? It's not cost effective. It really isn't. Sainsbury's tried it when they built the first the depot, the bus service lasted a year, and then they stopped it. And then what legal grounds do the council have to actually challenge that? You know, we're relying on Next saying, yeah, we'll give you 4 million. What are you going to do if they don't? If I'm an employee and I live in Loughton, my direct route would be to go Goldings Hill, Woodridden Hill, straight down to Dowding Way. I'm at work in whatever period of time, depending on the time of day. With you saying that I can't travel through the Sack, I would now have to, from Loughton, travel down the M11, go along the North Circular, travel down Waltham Way, travel on to Suiston Road, then on to Dowding Way, and then to Next. So you've added approximately 12 miles to my journey each day, where that journey would be about 2 miles. You've actually added to the emissions in the area by forcing that employee to do that. Or what I could do as an employee is drive down to my road, Lodge Lane, Beachfield Walk. I could park up, you know, wherever there's a parking space, and then I could walk through the back alleyway to the rear gates of Next and say, hi, can I get my £2 bonus now? Because that's what you're going to pay me per day for walking or cycling to work. How do you know that that employee has done that? My colleague Karina talked about habitat and wildlife, so I won't go into that. She knows far more about that kind of thing than I do. One of the statements that Next also said was they're going to bring £1 million to Waltham Abbey economy. That would mean that every employee that you are going to have on that site would spend approximately £10 a day in the Abbey. So I'm an employee, I've got a bus to your depot, I've now got to walk, it's about a mile from Next to the Abbey, buy my lunch, walk a mile back, spend £10 and do that all within an hour. That's not going to happen, is it? That really is not going to happen. If I asked you to walk a mile now and back, you're not going to do it. Going back to the M25 and the roundabout, you're saying you're going to do major improvements on that roundabout. You've actually got, if you're heading westbound on the M25, approaching junction 26, the lane coming off down to the roundabout is 2 lanes. You've actually stated you're going to paint a white line down that slip road. It doesn't need a white line. There are white lines there. It is a 2-lane road. What difference will that make? You're then also, on the roundabout, you're going to paint keep clear signs. Do you follow every keep clear sign on a roundabout or at a junction? I bet you don't. So how are you going to enforce that? Because it's not enforceable by law. It's a suggestion. You then said, okay, what we're also going to do is as I go up Woodridden Hill, to make life easier, we're going to do the no right turn. So if I'm a resident that lives down that road, because there are residents, funny enough, that live in the forest, I now have to, if I come off the M25, I now will have to drive down Dowding Way, drive down Suiston Road, drive up Avey Lane, and then turn into the road where I live. So you're actually adding more emissions. You're adding about 2.5 miles to that person's journey. And would you like a no right turn at the end of your road? Because that's the only way you can get in? I don't think so. Next have also said they're bringing hundreds of jobs to the Abbey. We should be really thankful. Have you actually spoken to Sainsbury's and asked how many local residents work in that Sainsbury's? There are about 25% that are local residents. The rest of them are all shipped in by either agency or they walk across from Enfield through the Gunpowder Park, through their housing estate there. So how are you actually going to convince the people, the local residents of the Abbey, where an average 3-bedroom house is about 350,000? You don't pay much more than the national average wage for a warehouse operative. I'd like to see you buy a £350,000 house on not so far off a minimum wage. You also said that, this is going back to the meeting 4 years ago, that Waltham Abbey is a deprived area. We should be really thankful that you're bringing this wonderful thing to the Abbey. At that time, there was only 2 wards within Waltham Abbey that were areas of deprivation. And they were only classed as areas of deprivation because of low educational standard, not anything else. And I'm sure if you look at any district and look at ward, break it down to wards, there will always be individual wards that will have pockets of deprivation. That's life. You've talked about the DRT for staff. In fact, I've covered that, sorry. On a personal note, back when there was public consultations, the first one 4 years ago, there was another one about 2 years ago. I specifically spoke to your representatives and a representative from Epping Forest Council, pointing out quite clearly that the footpath you are saying that staff will use to go to the back of the depot and will be a cycle path actually runs past my front door. Okay, so I'm quite passionate about this. If all these wonderful things happen and your 500 staff all walk, skip, jump, cycle to work, they're going to be walking past my front door. Okay? To me, that is an invasion of my privacy. Look at the Human Rights Act, Article 8, Protocol 1. I have a right to privacy, family life, and my home. What are you going to do to protect me? One of the things I suggested was that footpath being moved. It can be moved as you come over the footbridge from Round Hills. You don't have to turn right and then dog turn left. You can actually make that path straight across to the back of Next. But no one listened. I'm just a mere resident. Your depot is 300 yards from my back garden. If I look out my back windows upstairs, I will be able to see it. The majority of the residents on my estate will be able to see it. The noise from the development, the dust from the development, the noise from your vehicles reversing and docking, we will hear. What are you going to do to protect me and my family? There's been lots of meetings kept very hush-hush over the years. Freedom of information requests have shown there was meetings as long ago as 5 years ago with directors of Epping Forest Council, with directors of Next and Trinity Hall. Before the planning meeting, Next had free rein with the councillors to actually come and do consultations directly with the councillors to talk about what a wonderful thing you're bringing to the Abbey. Yet me, as a resident, I get 3 minutes. How is that fair? Thankfully, the councillors saw through and rejected your plans, and we're now where we are now. I think that's it. I think I've exhausted. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Mr. Bird, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, sir. Same approach.
I've got one question. Early on in your oral submissions, you referred to the building, the warehouse that's proposed, if I recall correctly, being half a mile long.
The development is, the sort of gate, the fence there is about half a mile in length by the looks of it. Yeah.
I just want to be clear, because as I understood it, the actual warehouse building that's being proposed is about 230 metres, which is about 1/8 of a mile.
Yeah, no, it's the actual development, because the concreted area, etc., you're talking about half a mile in length, roughly. I've not, got my measuring tape out.
I just want to make sure I got the note down correctly, because there is a difference between half a mile for a building versus half a mile for a site.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks.
Thank you.